Michael Clancy with EcoPoint Inc.
Outstanding. Thank you for joining the program here today. EcoPoint Inc. Boy, I love to guess what some companies do sometimes, and I'm thinking EcoPoint, you guys are a point of the ecology, aren't you? Or what's the name all about? How's that, Michael?
Yeah, so the name is kind of focused in our roots, which is ecological information and combining that with geospatial information.
So, ecological information, describe that a little bit for our listeners.
So we really focus on restoration and plant ecology and trying to maximize the dollars that are spent and the reclamation efforts that are conducted on behalf of the industry.
I was going to mention, you sound like you guys come in handy with reclamation when it comes to the oil and gas industry. I imagine, I don't know if there's any front end part that's done on, going out and surveying the land or anything like that, but talk to me a little bit about the process that's involved from beginning to end, because so many oil companies, they want to harvest what's there, but their end goal is to actually leave the place better than when they got there. At least that's what I've seen a lot of times. Talk to me a little bit about the process.
Yeah, well, I think you're completely right that, often we find these well pads that have been gone through the final abandonment stages and have been fully reclaimed, following best practices, actually ecologically are more productive and in better shape than when we showed up. So, walking through the initial kind of planning and permitting phases, it's a really important part for our customers and the industry as a whole to kind of do an initial site survey, understand what the ecological condition of the well pad is and what it is doing before we come in and actually build the well pad. So we'll conduct a pre-construction evaluation of the site and, collect important pieces of information like soil, topsoil depth, soil health, erosion characteristics, plant communities, and just generally other ecological functions like proximity to sensitive areas or wildlife habitat, and kind of categorize the site before the construction occurs. Then as construction occurs, they'll use that information to ensure they're mitigating any impacts that they have. The industry has gotten actually really good at understanding limitations that are in place because of these ecological considerations. So how much topsoil they need to strip, what the soil handling needs to look like. I'd argue the oil and gas industry is the best at these construction techniques that mitigate the impact that they have of any development focused industry out there. So they'll come in, handle the topsoil, do all the existing site mitigation that's required during the construction process. And then once the initial construction is done and we're reaching initial flowback dates, then we'll initiate what's called the interim reclamation process. And that interim reclamation process is just really stabilizing the initial larger footprint that was required for the development of the pad. Once that's been completed, then we enter that full initial reclamation kind of monitoring phase where, we're making sure the site's not being overtaken by weeds or erosion features aren't a big concern. We're avoiding any potential issues to groundwater or surface water that can come along with these developments. And so we'll kind of implement a monitoring program that just ensures everyone is consistent and safe with their operation of that pad throughout its life cycle. Once those pads reach the end of their life cycle and we are ready to come in and plug and abandon it, we'll come back out. We'll access the information that we've been gathering over the 20 to 40 years life cycle of that pad, maybe shorter in some locations, and actually take that information combined with the initial pre-disturbance monitoring that occurred prior to construction and come in, recontour, reshape, claim that well pad back to an initial existing state, and then move into the final reclamation procedure where we'll bring back in the target species that were identified during that pre-disturbance or post-disturbance in some cases, seed in with a good seed mix, make sure our soil health is up to where it needs to be, and then we'll monitor and make sure that location meets the appropriate adjacent or pre-disturbance cover criteria as set by whoever the regulating authority is that monitors and controls that in that specific area.
One of the things that I've noticed covering the oil and gas industry for about 10 years now is how they have created a very proactive culture from what it was, at least when I grew up, reading about it and understanding and being told what the industry was. What I mean by that is having, people like yourself or even archaeologists go out there and survey the site ahead of time. That's a proactive approach, and then you layer in some regulations and a few other things. I understand what you mean by when you said they're probably or you would argue they're the number one industry when it comes to reclamation and when it comes to, being a good Boy Scout or Girl Scout, leaving the land better than when you found it. How much of that do you guys kind of talk about, I guess, because that was a pretty bold statement there about, that they're probably the best that there is in industry to do that. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I've been involved in reclamation in the oil and gas industry my entire career. I grew up with it in Western Colorado, during the late 90s, early 2000s. The industry during that time became really aware of the need to mitigate the impact and mitigate the effort, the disturbance that's caused by the construction of these, critical infrastructure pieces that they require and that, our nation requires. And so they put a lot of effort into understanding best practices, understanding what they needed to do to ensure a successful reclamation, whether that was the interim or if that was the post final abandonment reclamation. I would say one of the greatest and most interesting things that has come out of reclamation in the industry is the work that's been done in concert with academia. There's a lot of universities and a lot of individuals and a lot of organizations that are partnering to further the science of reclamation. We've spent so much energy, time, and money on furthering the industry, thanks to oil and gas, that we're now at a point where we're able to achieve reclamation success in a rapid manner and an effective manner, and do these things with the minimal amount of impact to the wildlife or habitat that can possibly be done. The University of Wyoming has contributed greatly to the scientific progress there. There's some research and some development going on there for a variety of things, from new innovative monitoring techniques to advanced reclamation procedures. Even CSU and Colorado State, they've been doing some really interesting things. And when you really start looking into this, you'll see industry's dedication to it. They've funded a lot of this research. They've performed a lot of on-the-ground trials, collected good, sound, quantitative and statistically valid data to ensure that look, this work we're doing is the best work that we can do and the most effective. One of the things that's unique about the oil and gas industry is its desire for technological advancement. That doesn't just stop with the ability to extract the resource. It also extends into reclaiming the land, or even bettering the ecological function of specific regions. I've seen industry come into areas, even here on the Western Slope, and put large sums of money and large amounts of effort behind restoration and habitat improvement for mitigation for their work with groups like the Muley Foundation, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. There's been a lot of focus, a lot of energy, and a lot of resources dedicated to the improvement of those lands that otherwise wouldn't be done. These are areas where the industry is successful and has a reason to be there, and they're now putting a lot of money and a lot of effort into it that otherwise there just wouldn't be the money there, and the energy and the effort to really understand this stuff.
Gentleman made a comment last week on the program talking about how it seems that in the wildlife world, the hunters are the ones that make the most investment and seem to put the most assistance to preserving the wildlife and different areas to make sure that there's always a place for the wildlife to grow. Your comment about the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and some of that reminded me of the oil and gas industry seems to be the leaders when it comes to reclamation and being environmentalists these days. Just like how, ironically, the hunters seem to be in the wildlife area. What do you make of that ironic comment that it seems the oil and gas industry appears to be the leader in environmental movement these days?
I couldn't agree more with that comment. It's just a matter of fact that the amount of conservation dollars spent in the United States globally, in fact, are majority of those dollars come from hunters. That's just a cold, hard reality that we have to face. There are some federal programs out there that exist that contribute significantly, but hunters do a lot to enhance that. I think that goes hand in hand with what the industry is doing. These guys are out here every day. They enjoy where they work. They're, people just like the rest of us, and everybody is interested in preserving and conserving the habitat that they have. And there is a lot of money and a lot of effort being put forth into that conservation. There's a unique study going on in the Pinedale field office right now. It's actually being conducted by the University of Wyoming, and it's talking about sage-grouse habitat improvement as a result of oil and gas development, and particularly the development of early annual species, early seral species that provide food and resources for insects and critical early food sources for sage grouse and in the industry, or in the area there. Good pollinating plants that attract a lot of pollinators and provide a wide variety of food sources for sage grouse and additional species that we never thought would be a reality. When the Pinedale Field Office first started some of their reclamations, or the Jonah Field started some of their reclamation requirements, we saw a lot of disturbance, and we tried to understand what that was. we now are so far along that we're understanding there's most certainly complications and issues that are derived from oil and gas development, but there are additionally a lot of benefits that we can bring into the ecosystem. And so, the industry as a whole has really found that we can come into areas that, have undergone extensive previous livestock grazing or land degradation due to invasive species. And the industry will come in and make a really big impact by trying to mitigate that disturbance, that previous disturbance or their disturbance, and actually enhance that function. They're, in some cases, like you said, they're mandated to do that. In other cases, these folks are partnering with agencies and nonprofits to further these efforts. Just last month, we co-hosted a reclamation pub talk with the Society for Ecological Restoration with High Point Resources in Greeley, Colorado. And it was a great, unique blend of people and a lot of like-minded people that otherwise might have seemed at odds with each other, but coming together and, enjoying a couple beers, as well as talking about reclamation and success and different projects and challenges that we face as as American citizens in the Intermountain West. We're all interested in it. And, the ability of industry to partner with groups like the Society for Ecological Restoration just really shows their commitment to furthering these efforts.
How's everything going in Colorado? Just kind of an update from there. You're in Rifle, Grand Junction, Fruitia area. The Western Slope is what I think you called it. I forgot that's what you guys call it out there. Talk to me just what's happening out there. You got the governor. He actually said the words "war on oil and gas." He kind of did that. The ban, I guess, is what the media is calling it. The setback is, I guess, is the correct terminology. But you understand what I'm talking about. Do you have any sort of anecdotal update? What's going on out there?
So SB 181 was kind of the latest attack and the latest move against the industry. The popular vote defeated the Proposition 112, which was effectively a very similar bill during the election. And as soon as that was complete and had lost, next thing we knew, there was some new legislation that wasn't put to popular vote and was just passed by the Senate. And 181 is it's been an interesting ride. A lot of it is settling down right now, and people are really figuring out what's going on with the bill and what the impacts are and what kind of work we need to do to ensure that we continue to get permits and we're able to continue to develop. On the Western Slope, we're a little slower right now, just by the nature of these resources here. People are still permitting, still building. We actually conducted a surveying project, a mapping project for a large company over here last week that they're planning on building some roads and a couple of new pads and pursuing their permits with that work. Over on the Front Range, I think Weld County's kind of standing out. SB 181 was really slated as a local control for counties, local governments, and Weld County is just, I think it was yesterday or the day before, came out and said, all right, we'll take that on. They've come out with draft rules, and they've come out with their intentions to actually put in place an oil and gas department for the permitting process, and they've really said, hey, if this is what you guys are saying, we're going to go in, we're going to take it, and we're going to stand up kind of our own regulatory division and try to help the industry get some permits and get some work moving forward here. I think it was kind of we were riding high from the defeat of the Proposition 112, and then 181 just came in, snuck in there, and got ramrodded through the Senate and passed really quickly, signed into law, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare or fight for that. It kind of caught us off guard. But I think now everybody's kind of getting a little more comfortable. Once the regulatory agencies figure out what exactly the impacts of those bills are going to be, or that bill is going to be, we'll know a little more. But we're resilient, and at this point, we're gonna just keep moving forward. Hopefully, we'll move from a point of defense to a point of offense pretty quickly here, and really start working to get ahead of those kind of challenges in the future, as well as protect our opportunity going forward with existing permits or some of the regulatory obligations that we're now facing. We've been working really closely with several customers to try to understand the reality of some of these rules, and how impactful they really are. We've been struggling to get anything permitted since the bill passed, but we're fighting forward. Just today, we were working on a couple, so we're moving forward. I think everybody's just trying to stay optimistic and see where we need to go from here.
One of the reasons why Michael Clancy on the line with us with EcoPoint, one of the reasons I asked you about it is we've been following this template for a little while now, because I believe, and you can go back and listen to my interviews for the last 5 years, we call it the rise of environmentalism, the cult of environmentalism. And I watched it happen through a number of different things, and then when it happened through Colorado, I noticed a template. Well, then we had Ray Scott on the program. He's a legislator out in your neck of the woods, and he taught from Grand Junction. He talked about the Colorado Blueprint, I think was the name of it. It was a book that was kind of written. So that validated, and then Oregon, of course, has passed it through the Senate. Wyoming has a similar ban with the BLM. You grew up in the industry, and you grew up in that Western Slope area, and that's pretty much, like I say, from Rifle to Fruitia to Grand Junction. That's oil and gas country out there. From my understanding, I've been out there, and from what I hear, is that an accurate statement?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, you guys are getting the pitchforks ready to go already, and you guys are using them to write new regulations out. So that's how much of oil and gas country it is. But at the same time, when you look at where the populations are, same things in Texas, same things in North Dakota, number 1 and number 2 oil and gas producing states in the nation. The universities and a lot of the larger cities are outnumbering the growth of the oil and gas communities. And, with Austin and Dallas, and out in North Dakota, you got Fargo and Grand Forks. So when I see this rise of environmentalism and the template of, using emotion and that sort of thing, it led me to believe that the oil and gas industry needs to really reinvent how they approach things and how they engage with people and that sort of thing. Talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts are about, you mentioned, going to these socials, that sort of thing. That's important, but I think we're at a stage where the oil and gas industry needs to start engaging with the non-oil and gas communities and industries a little bit I don't know, it just seems like there's a lot more regulation coming from outside the oil and gas communities these days than within. And it's there's no right or wrong answer on this. It's more of just you grew up in the industry and you're in the industry. You're seeing it happen firsthand right before your eyes, to where your governor calls it a war on oil and gas. And I'm looking at it like, when the heck did the light switch get political? I mean, when did this happen? And so, anyway, talk to me a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I think you've nailed the exact problem. It's Colorado. You hear the state of Boulder bantered about pretty frequently. I think the reality is that, with the urbanization of America, with the population centers of these large urban densities developing so quickly, that people are more disconnected with the land. They don't understand where they're at in relationship to the land, or the land's relationship to them. I think there's an unfortunate reality that we cherry pick a lot of the science that just advocates for our particular point of view, and you see that with the Republic of Boulder, as it's called, here in Colorado, where these folks, they like to see the mountains, or they've come out here for school, or they've grown up in these large urban centers, and they don't understand what it's like to live in a rural area, what it's like to really experience the land and the interaction of the industry with your area. And they feel like they're on a higher plane or a different level than the folks that are in the industry, that are experiencing this stuff, that live it day to day. We're seeing consistent scientific studies at this point that are refuting a lot of the claims, or a lot of the issues that have been kind of the backstop for some of this rise in environmentalism. And I think ultimately the efforts that the industry is putting forth right now, with their intentions for oil, for understanding their impact on the land, for mitigating any of their issues with air, water, soil, that we're now getting to a point where you can't just easily refute or point the finger in a scientific way at the industry anymore. There was just so much biased information coming out that wasn't on a sound scientific standing. And now here we are in 2019, and we're seeing a lot of this information, or these historic scientific data sets, just proving wrong, or they were ultimately driven by some form of a bias. I think we've seen that here in Colorado a lot more recently, and a lot more prevalently, but that bias has been around for quite some time. And ultimately, I think those kind of arguments they're going to show their true colors, with all the progress that's being made from the industry's side. People will really be hard pressed to continue to just blindly throw rocks at industry without really understanding the impacts of stuff, or how these communities and people that work and live in the industry or in these areas really do understand, and really do have a commitment to engaging effectively and appropriately with the regulations, or our moral obligations, or any of our efforts to do what we need to, like you said, keep the light switch on.
Well, one of the things we've done is we've sponsored an environmentalist actually who believes that the oil and gas industry is leading the planet and saving the earth. He believes the cell phones are the number one pollutant, not fossil fuels. And we love his message because he's not trying to ban fossil fuels. He's trying to just tell people it's a all the above field. And we need to focus on where the positives and what keeps the lights on for us. And also shift the conversation to cell phones are the number one polluter on the planet, and we're not going to get rid of them. We already know that. And so it's interesting. He was in Minnesota, the Johnny Green, and he won the tournament. He's got a belt and everything. So he was in Minnesota. He ended up in a 4th of July parade, and he's cleaning lakes in Minnesota, engaging with kids. He's making the industry fun again. And what I've seen happen in the last 10 years is I've seen, we'll say millennials. They'll come into the industry, and I feel bad for the millennials. They grew up in an environment of extremism to where everything is the worst and everything is the best. And then they got to go out into the world and figure it out for themselves. And then they get picked on because they're entitled and everything else. No wonder they have such a backlash going right now against everybody else, because they're being told who they are and they're still trying to figure it out for themselves. You're a millennial, aren't you?
Just on the cusp of one. I won't lay claim to it, though.
Yeah, you're kind of a Gen X millennial. You're right in the middle there.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
and I'm again here I am blanketing statements, but after watching this, the majority of the millennials, like everybody else, hey, most people are good people. Then they go out into the world and they try to figure things out for themselves, and then you got everybody telling them who they are and they're not, and this and that, and it's a confusing time. What I've seen from millennials in the oil and gas industry, they go into the industry and they have a predetermined mindset of what the industry is like, and it's not on the positive side. It is more of a dirty and, let's ban it type thing. And then within a very short period of time, it completely switches and they're their biggest cheerleaders. I've seen it time and time again. And that's what I think the industry should do more of. And I don't know what the answer is. And that's why like I said, we're sponsoring Johnny Green, and we've got local musicians for our bumper music. So that way we get musicians promoting us instead of protesting us. And just, I kind of would like to know your thoughts on just some new ideas because listen, the horizontal flushing has reinvented oil and gas. I've got John Gibson, Harold Hamm, and James Volker from Continental Whiting and One Oak saying that all this new technology has paradigm shifted, changed the industry. Talk to anybody in HR or engineering, for that matter, what you guys do. And with EcoPoint, the big data has completely changed your guys' industry, and drones and all that other stuff. So that industry had to be reinvented. In the media, we had to do things differently. So we found somebody who's an environmentalist who supports the oil and gas industry and for everything it stands for. We've engaged with musicians. So we're doing our little part type of a thing. Well, I'd like to know your opinion as somebody from the industry on what we're doing, and maybe what, if the oil and gas industry, same old, or if we need to start thinking outside the box and trying some things that are fun and engaging and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Ultimately, when it's a big problem that you're talking about here.
Okay, good, because I didn't want to turn a mountain into a molehill, but at the same time, when we got two presidential candidates talking about banning our industry in the new Green Deal, somebody's got to step up and say something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. It's a big issue. It's kind of Red Riding Hood syndrome here. People making out the industry to be the big bad wolf. I think really spreading and understanding the idea of of who we are, what we do, and what we stand for is really important. And I think that starts locally. I think that starts with reaching out and partnering with organizations like Johnny Green, you guys have partnered with, us and High Point Resources, partnering with the Society for Ecological Restoration. I know that a lot of industry has partnered with academia and really tried to drive that forward. It's a big industry. It's an important industry, so it has a lot of attention to it. My work at EcoPoint has been spun out of the geospatial world, and doing a lot of drone mapping, a lot of technology, a lot of mapping work, and we're doing innovative, interesting things that, as the society shifts towards the technology, consumerization of IT, as I like to call it, with cell phones, like you mentioned earlier, people understanding that the industry's there. It's on the forefront on a technological basis. It's there on an ecological basis. It's there on a production basis. We're really on the front edge of a lot of things. I've done a lot of work with Doug Dennison from High Point Resources. He's the director of community affairs over there, and he has sponsored and done more for the industry here in Colorado than a whole lot of people. We're going to be here. Another good example of partnering with an organization is this September, we're partnering with the Colorado Youth Outdoors Organization in Fort Collins. And we're going to be hosting another reclamation targeted event. But Doug has put it together where industry goes out to this facility and does on the ground, hands in the dirt reclamation, and partners with these kind of organizations, and particularly the youth, to show them that, hey, these are the things that we're doing as an organization, and trying to kind of break that mold or that stereotype that we're just out here extracting oil, extracting gas, and just not caring about anything else, not participating in the communities. I think from a legislative standpoint, we have plenty of work to do as well. While we have a lot of organizations that are paying attention to that, really as a community coming together and ensuring our voices are heard, and that we're sharing that information with the youth, with the public at large, is really what we need to do. There's a lot of issues and a lot of difficulties associated with some of that, but really, I think we have the opportunity to make our voices heard by more community engagement, by sharing of more information and more resources, by making these small partnerships. I know Whiting Oil and Gas up in North Dakota, they're doing a lot for simple things like roadside trash pickup, and getting the industry together to travel around and clean up the roads and the highways, and getting our faces out there in the public and showing them who we are, instead of just their perceptions of what we are and what we're doing, and not seeing us. We can't really sit back and play defense anymore. And we need to get out there, participate, interact, and share everything that we're doing. There's just so many positive things.
I couldn't agree more.
In the industry, and if we can get out there, share them, interact with people, participate in youth programs.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, one of the things that we've done at the Crude Life here is we've decided to take control of the conversation and the narrative once again. And, again, we're the little guy, we can't do it overnight, but hopefully it's that snowball effect that if we can get enough people taking control of that narrative again, This happened in the agriculture industry. People became very detached at how they eat a hamburger, where that came from, how it got there. Yada. I mean, so there is a little bit of a history to be told here, but at the same time, there is a new emotional push against the oil and gas industry like I've never seen before, and taking control of that narrative once again is very important, and it's tough to do. And listen, anybody listening out here, this is just a couple guys in the industry trying to keep things moving, because like your response was, this is a big problem. The new Green Deal bans our industry in 10 years. And that's like not even a real thing. That to me is I can't even fathom how that would work just from a construction standpoint, the PVC pipes alone that are made out of petroleum products. So, it's on one hand, two people are trying to have a civil conversation. On the other hand, people are talking about banning an industry that about 70% of the society relies on. So that you understand where I'm coming from. It's very difficult to have a sane conversation without having people throw stones at you these days. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think, paying attention to the facts, sharing who we are, what we're doing, and, staying on the rational side of the argument is where we have to be, and we'll continue to further our efforts. We are just a couple guys from the industry here, but, I am an avid outdoorsman. I enjoy spending all of my time not working outside doing something and enjoying outdoors. And I have a degree in environmental science, and here I am, working in the industry, having huge impacts on society, and having a lot of positive interactions with the public, doing a variety of things, volunteering for all kinds of organizations, and that's just what we need to do. The folks in the industry are good folks, and we have a lot of positive things to offer.
Michael Clancy with us, EcoPoint. Appreciate you coming on the program to talk a little bit about reclamation, the environment, also what's been going on lately in the oil and gas industry, also giving us an update on Colorado, what's been happening out there with the quote-unquote ban, SB 181, the ramrod. I've heard all kinds of different words for Colorado's issues that's going on there. But go ahead and give yourself a little bit of a commercial for EcoPoint. We appreciate you coming on the program and giving us this good information. Love the expert advice, the boots on the ground info. Talk to me. Just give yourself a little bit of a plug, how people can get in touch with you, what you guys are offering, and who is your customer.
Great. Yeah. So like I said earlier, we are a technology company. We're geospatially focused. We have a lot of offerings. Most of them focus around environmental work, whether that's reclamation, restoration, permitting, a variety of different options there. But we focus on enablement of the industry through geospatial technology, database development, maps, data recording, big data, and advanced mapping and surveying procedures. So we're working with people from Texas all the way up to North Dakota and just about everywhere in between to advance the industry and really move things forward. There's a lot of opportunity in the industry right now, and the industry being as technologically advanced as it is, there's a whole lot of improvement and development that's out there for companies to have, and that's really what we're focused on, is providing those improvements and doing them most economically and advanced ways that we possibly can.
What's the website?
So our website is EcoPoint-Inc.com. That's EcoPoint-Inc.com.
ECOPOINT dash or hyphen, depends on how you'd like to call it, inc.com. EcoPoint dash inc.com. Great. Well, appreciate you coming on the program today.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great day.